So thank you so much, Ms. Alexios, for joining us at this interview and the Connecting Green Hydrogen Manner. For those who may not be very familiar with you, maybe you can walk us through your role, company, and how that's related to hydrogen.
Morning, Molly. Thank you for inviting me for this interview. I'm Alexios. I'm a partner at Deloitte in the Middle East, based out of Abu Dhabi. I really focus on supporting our clients within the energy and industrial space. Deloitte is the world's largest professional services organization, and we're really at the forefront of supporting our clients' decarbonization agendas and journeys, as well as supporting them on end-to-end M&A in the energy transition space.
Thank you. For the Connecting Green Hydrogen Manner, you actually joined one of our most important sessions, being the executive panel, Building International Partnership for MENA's Thriving Hydrogen Economy. What is your picture for this topic? And after the discussion, what's your main reflection?
It's a great question, Molly. There's a lot of ambition. There are lots of activities happening, especially in this part of the world. Really, the Middle East and North Africa really want to have a first mover advantage in the green hydrogen economy. But there are really several different pathways that you can actually get to those shared goals and ambitions. Ultimately, governments are driving a lot of the ambitions forward with very critical goals and very aggressive milestones. Ultimately, then that pushes industry participants to really act, and they're acting now. So at the moment, industry players are still exploring different business models, different financing models for the purpose of de-risking those big investments which are required in the hydrogen space. But I think we had a fantastic panel yesterday and a great discussion with other participants, really to discuss that there is really no one-size-fits-all in this approach. Corporates are actually using different strategies, different organizations are trying different approaches and different models for the purpose of decarbonizing their operations. I think one of the key messages which came out of the discussion yesterday, it's not about the color, but ultimately about the intensity of the carbon that you're actually producing and emitting. So ultimately, focusing on low carbon solutions is really the way forward. And what we really see in the region is different players actually adopting different approaches to meeting those low carbon goals.
Yes, but the ultimate goal is the carbonization towards net zero. And timeline is another key word that we've been hearing about throughout the conference. So can you give us a bit of the commercial sense of timeline? What time you're actually targeting to, we're actually talking about?
So in my own mind, if you ask me, I would really see activity at scale in the 2030, 2040, 2050 horizon. But the time to act is really now. And we see a lot of activity across the region from industry participants, international partners, which are really coming together for the purpose of understanding how to establish those value chains, there's a tremendous amount of work which needs to happen to be able to have a commercial activity at scale in the 2040, 2050 timeframe. So investments are happening today to establish renewable energy generation capacity, to understand how to use electrolyzers and what technologies to actually go forward with. A lot of this effort is actually happening right now, and it has to, if we are actually to look at some form of commercial operations and a viable supply chain and trade corridors being established by the 2030, 2040, and 2050 timeframe.
Yes. Generating short-term wins, the short wins is very important for the industry. So what are your practical step-by-step recommendations for the industry to enable progress and faster growth?
I think if I think about it, there are probably 5 things that participants and partners should really think about. First of all, I think it's about understanding where you can use that hydrogen locally, first of all, to decarbonize some industry sectors before you really start thinking about exports and having a globally traded commodity or molecule. I think that's really step number 1. Step number 2 is to continue investing heavily in developing your renewable power generation capacity, but also your local and regional hydrogen supply infrastructure. Developing the pipelines, the transportation networks, where it's going to be produced, where it's going to be consumed, how you actually get the molecules from A to B. I think that's really step number 2. Step number 3 is to really align the regulatory framework, especially from the big demand centers, so that we can actually understand from a supply perspective what type of hydrogen and molecules are required to fulfill decarbonization goals in the demand centers. And really that will also support, as step number 4, to establish international trade corridors. We've already seen a few being established, but we need a lot more so that we can actually test the viability of this global supply chain and global trade to start really enabling cross-border trade. And finally, number 5 is to really work with international partners and organizations to really find novel ways to de-risk projects, to actually support these investments, and ultimately keep on discussing about supply offtakes in the long term.
Yes, regulatory support and partnership is the key to success. And wrapping up today's interview, if there's one piece of advice you would like to give your partners, clients, for the industry in general, what the advice would be?
Again, great question. In my own mind, there's really no one size fits all. We are actually witnessing and seeing very, very different strategies which are being employed by industry participants to actually get to their decarbonization goals and net zero ambitions in the next 20, 30 years. So we do see green, but ultimately we also see blue hydrogen value chains. We see ammonia, fertilizers, we see e-fuels. So we've actually heard big debates about the sustainable aviation fuel and methanol. So there are really different pathways that people are employing to actually get to those decarbonization goals they have set themselves. So really my view is there's no one size fits all. We really have to think about decarbonization as a holistic discussion and approach, and really push forward with government support, regulatory support, corporations being very, very ambitious and really getting things done from today.
Thank you so much.